Hello and welcome to our 7th session, and in this section we are going to discuss about the Deform section in this modeling module of Unreal Engine 5.6. Actually, in our previous session in the Xform section we had left with one module, that is the transfer, which we are going to discuss in this section. If you are continuing from the previous session, you can directly launch the project and start with it. But if you are starting fresh, then the completed files from your previous session is available on our Patreon page. If you come into the YouTube description page or in the LMS description page, you have the Patreon link here. Click on this Patreon link, and here if you scroll down, you have a link to all the attachments, and you have the file here, content for deform.zip. So click on this and download this file. Once the file is downloaded, just right click on this and just extract all these files to a folder. You have a folder called maps here. Now launch Epic Games Launcher, come into Unreal Engine library and launch Unreal Engine 5.6. Come into film video section, and in blank I am going to come down here in the project name. I am going to now call this as deform_practice. See that it is in Unreal projects. We are saving our projects, and click create. If it asks for project file is out of date, click update here. You can come into the folder where you downloaded this maps folder. I will just right click and cut it. I will come into Unreal Engine content drawer, and in the content here I will right click and choose show in Explorer. And now in deform practice content folder, I will right click and paste this maps folder, and immediately in the content folder you can see this. If by chance if you cannot see this, just restart Unreal Engine and launch the project. In our previous session, in this we had worked on this modeling_practice level, and for today's session I am going to create a new level. I will go to file, new level, and I am going to start with an empty level and click create. Now I will come to file, save current level as, and in maps I am going to call this level as deform_practice and click save. To get the default lighting here, I will come into window, environment light mixer, and I will enable create skylight, direction light, sky atmosphere, volumetric cloud, and height fog, and I will close this. Then I will right click here and I will create a folder called as atmosphere, and I will drag all these 5 components into this atmosphere folder so that it is correctly organized. Then I will come from the selection mode and move into the modeling mode. Now let us first create an object. I will start with a box. I will click on the box, and now I am going to create my ground area, and this ground area is about 40 feet, that is around 1200 centimeter width by 60 feet, which is around 1800 centimeter, and the height is around 1 feet, which means it is 30 centimeter. Instead of using 111 subdivision, because we are using deform, we need more geometry. So for that, in the width subdivision I will divide it into 100, depth subdivision I will divide it into 100, and the height 20 subdivision is enough for height. And with that I will come here, bring this plane over here, click here and click accept. Then I will click here to reset its position to 0, 0, 0. I am going to come into the deform mode, and we are going to start with Vertex Sculpt. But before coming to Vertex Sculpt, I want you to come into attribute and click on the inspect. And right now you can see this is made up of 56,000 triangles. So my entire this geometry is made up of 56,000 triangles. For this mesh inspector I will close complete. Then I will come into deform and choose Vertex Sculpt. Now what is this sculpting? You might have heard about the sculpting artists who use clay molds, and from the clay molds they shape out different shapes, objects or statues. Similarly, we call the same process here as digital sculpting. Now sculpting means, actually when you are doing modeling, there are 2 types of modeling process. One we call as the organic modeling, and another is the inorganic modeling. Now till now, when we created the chair, when we created different shapes, that is if you come into content drawer, modeling practice, we created this chair. All these are called as inorganic models made up of polygons. However, in real life, whatever objects are created by nature, say for example humans, animals, all those doesn't have a specific geometrical shapes. They have a very complex shape, and to create these kind of models just by using polygons is very difficult, and this is where we make use of sculpting. Sculpting is basically used to create organic models like humans, animals, etc. And actually for sculpting the best software is ZBrush, or you have to use Blender, and those are the software in which we actually do the sculpting, and Unreal is still in a very primitive stage for full-fledged sculpting process. However, we are going to explore how we can use some features of sculpting in Unreal to deform our geometry. So to begin with, I am going to start with the Vertex Sculpt. If I now come into this vertex selection mode, and if I select any of the vertex here, so I can select any of the vertex here clicking on it, and when I drag it or move it, only that one vertex is going to move. We were doing the extrude and using triangles and using face, we were extruding it. So I will go to edit and undo the transform. Now when you come into Vertex Sculpt, as soon as I enable Vertex Sculpt, you can see how the color of my is changed into a grayscale gradient, and you immediately see a brush like this. And this brush size, I can control it over here. I can increase the brush size here, or I can use the close square bracket to decrease the size and open square bracket to increase the size. So these two keys are used to control the brush size, and you have here the brush size, flow, spacing and lazy hit back faces. Leave all these things as it is in the default. And the most important thing is, if you come into the sculpting and if you click on this brush, you can see that you have around 16 brushes available here, and one of the first brush here by default will be move. So when I click on move, and if I come into my scene here and select any of the part over here, I will reduce the brush size here, and I select some area over here, and when I click and push, you can see that those segment of the vertices, it selects a set of vertices and it is going to move up like this. See, the set of vertices are selected and it will be moved like this. See, this is the first brush that we are going to use. See, it just moves. If I click accept, so now you have the sculpted surface over here. So there are some kind of projections created here using the move sculpting. Now again I will select this, come back to Vertex Sculpt, and this time instead of move, I am going to use smooth. Now when I click on smooth, and when I click on this moved object, you can now see it goes back and it smooths down. See, the whatever moved object was there, it has been smoothened. So I can just smoothen out, say for example I have a rough surface here, just like beveling, I can just smooth out these surfaces like this. Say I can create a smooth surface or smooth edges like this. So this is the application here. So I will press Q, I will come down here, and if required I will just reduce the brush size further, and see we are just smoothing the surfaces like this. And if I click accept, so you can now see the edges. See, normally if you take, I will just deselect it and show it to you. Normally if you take any ground, it will not be exactly square and you won't have the sharp edges. So now you can see how these edges are actually deformed using the sculpt tool. Now again I will come back here, select this, come into the Vertex Sculpt, and you have smooth fill. So whenever you have some hole or opening, you can use this smooth fill to fill this. So to show this, what I will do is this move, and when you are moving, if I click and drag, normally it moves up like this, but if I hold the control button and if I click, you can see that instead of moving up, it goes down and it creates a hole like this. If I click accept now, see now if I deselect it, you can see some kind of pits created here. And now if you want these pits to be filled, I will select this, come into Vertex Sculpt, and here I am going to come into this smooth fill, and when I click on smooth fill, you can see these holes gets filled up. So, these are the different tools we have to carry out the sculpting. Then apart from this, you have grab, wherein I can just grab any area over here. I will just right click, zoom out a little and then click here and pull it out. I can grab set of vertices and I can move it up like this, and if I click accept and if I deselect it, see you got these kind of projections coming out of my model. See we have this kind of projection. Now, when we have created this projection, one thing to observe here is, if I select this model and if you come into the attribute and if I choose inspect, see initially when we started, we inspected and we found that we had 56,000 triangles, and even now we have just 56,000 triangles. Means when we are actually adding polygon by grabbing and pulling it out, the same polygons will be rearranged and there will be no change in the total number of polygons. However, if you want these newly created shapes to be more smooth and have more polygons, then I am going to click complete here, come back to deform, and instead of vertex sculpt, we are going to use dynamic sculpt. And now what does dynamic sculpt is going to do is, when I select this and carry out the sculpting, now whenever say in dynamic sculpting, see the brush location has changed here, I have to select it from this list, and from this list brushes available here, I am say for example choose Inflate, and then I will press flower bracket, open flower bracket and reduce the brush size, and if I just drag it like this, see it created an inflation. And now when this inflation on, say when we are creating the addition of this kind of shapes, actually now the polygons number is going to increase, it is going to add polygons. So, when I inflate it like this or when I pull it out like this, so and if I click accept here and now come into attribute inspect, you can now see 56,000 vertices has increased to 58,660 vertices. So, that is why when you are using dynamic sculpting, be careful, sometimes the machine may hang due to too much of polygons. When it cannot handle it, it may crash. So, with this I will click complete here. In both this vertex sculpt and dynamic sculpt, you have many tools here which you can explore it. Right now I will cancel it and I will come to the next option over here, which is smooth. So, when I click on smooth, see the entire geometry turns out smooth, and you can see how the smoothing is happening. Here you have two options, fast iterative, fast implicit. See you have the result is different, and iterative diffusion. So, we have three features here. So, I will choose fast iterative, and here you can adjust the smoothing level here. So, how much amount of smoothing is required, and here you have the steps. Okay. So, now if I click accept, so my entire mesh appears to be smoothened out. This is the next option we have. Then you have offset. Offset means the entire mesh will be offset by a particular unit. So, if I click on offset and if I increase it, see how entire mesh I can offset it and I can change the geometry like this. So, now I click accept. Then the other most interesting feature we have here is the warp. Now, what does warp does is, if you click on warp, you have different options here, and the first option you have here is bend. So, first of all, you are seeing one yellow line here, and this determines the axis along which you are going to bend. So, now if I click here, press D and move around. So, it is now bending along this axis, and if you want this to bend along the other axis, I can just rotate it like this by 90 degree, and when I rotate it, now you can see the bend is happening along y axis, or if I turn it on the other way, the bend happens along the x axis. So, in this way I can change this bend angle, and then I can set the amount of bend needed. See, I can come here and I can set the upper bend limit. See, this is the upper bend limit and this is the lower bend limit. So, using this I can control the amount of bend. I will just turn it like this and I will bend it in this format. So, I can adjust the angle, and once I am happy, if I click accept, we are seeing it with the bend distortion. Come into create and I am going to create a cylinder. I am going to increase the height subdivision to around 50 and also the length I will make it 500, and I am going to create a cylinder like this, and I will press F to move closer to it. If I now come back to deform and if I apply warp, now if I use flare squash, you can see its effect. See, in the center it is getting either flared or squashed. So, I can control the upper and down limit like this, and then the lower limit I can control it here, and I can squash it either in cine mode. So, amount of squash I can control it here. I can even reduce it, and if I click accept, so now the cylinder has been converted into this shape. To explore the next tool, I will come into create, and this time I am going to create a sphere. So, I will click on the sphere and I will increase its radius to around 200, and I will bring it here, click and click accept. Press F to zoom to the sphere. I am going to come into deform and I am going to apply this lattice tool. When I apply lattice, you can immediately see that you get a 5 by 5 by 5 grid surrounding your object. And now here, by changing the position of these vertices, I can now control the shape. I will come here, I will draw a box and select all the vertices in this zone, and if I drag it, you can now see how my shape is getting distorted as I move the lattice. Right click, press D and press Q and come down, and I am going to now select all the vertices here at the bottom, and I will just drag it down like this and to the right like this. So, I can distort, I can move it in this direction, and now I can distort my object like this and create different shapes using this lattice boundary. So, using this lattice, I can select the lattice points over here and I can just drag it out like this and click accept. So, now I can define my own shapes like this using the lattice, and this is the next feature we have in this deform. For the next displacement option, this is one of the most interesting feature we have in deform. To explore this, I will come into the create. Right now, I will off box, cylinder and sphere, all the three visibility. Coming into the box with all the default values, I am going to create a box of 500 width and depth of 1000 and with a thickness of about 20, and in subdivision along width 100 subdivision, along depth 100 subdivision and along height 20 subdivision. So, I create this, bring this surface, click here and I am going to click accept, and then I am going to reset its position to 0, 0, 0. I will come into deform and I am going to apply the displace modifier. Now, when I click on displace, you can see the default display type is Perlin noise, and as soon as I applied it, you can see here I will press D and I will press Q and come down, I will press W. You can see how the surface has been displaced and you have a structure like this. So, if you want to have a muddy structure, you can create it and you can control the intensity here. So, say for example, I make this intensity about 0.3, there will be a very slight amount of displacement. If I make it 1, you can see how the displacement looks. If I make it 2, you can see how the displacement looks. So, I can create a very mild displacement like this. This is Perlin noise. So, if you click here I will come to texture 2D map in the last. You then have random noise. So, when I click on random noise, again here you have a structure like this, and I can now come here and change the displacement value to 1 and reduce the amount of displacement. Apart from random noise, I have sine wave, and in sine wave, if I increase the intensity to around 20 and if I show it, see you get a displacement like this. See, you get a sine wave type displacement here. So, you can control the wave frequency here. If I keep it 1, you have a huge frequency here. 0.2, I can control its frequency. I can change the wave direction here. I can shift the wave here, and I can change the wave direction here, and these are the various options available in displacement, and this is a very interesting function which we normally use when we do modeling. And I will come back to here default Perlin noise, and in Perlin noise I am going to set its value to around 0.9. So, I have a very light noise created over here, and I am going to click. Now, once I click accept, it takes some time for it to render. You have to wait till the mesh gets converted, and now I have the surface which is rough like this. We can control the displacement level using a black and white grayscale image. This entire modeling process is about building a complete house. So, this was our structured plan. Now, our structural engineer has given the foundation layout. This is the foundation layout given by them, and now I want in my ground the foundation to be digged in these areas. So, what we can do is we can convert this into a black and white image. I will create this into an image like this, where white represents the maximum displacement and black represents the minimum displacement, and I am going to save this file. So, this file I have provided to you in the zip folder along with this map file. Now, in your content maps, you have been provided with the structure underscore drawing one 2D file, and this file is a black and white image, and now I am going to select this deform image. Again I will apply displace here, and this time instead of Perlin noise I am going to use texture 2D map, and in texture 2D map in displacement map I will come here, and I am going to now select this structure underscore drawing, and as soon as I select this, and after I select this, and once I will come up here and apply the displacement. See, now if I set the displacement to around 30, you can now see the displacement happening, but it has become opposite. Only the black area has got extruded. So, I will set this value to minus 30, and now you can see I will just tilt up, press S and show it to you. So, now it shows the area where it will be dug, or I will even set it to minus 60. I create a minus 60 displacement, and then I have to slightly move it. See here, I will move along the y axis by around 0.2. 0.2 is too much. I will move it by 0.1, okay, or 0.08. Okay, so this appears to be fine. So, this is how our site needs to be digged, and if I click accept, it will take some time to refine this map now, because this will have a huge amount of polygons. So, if you just move in, now you can see that we have a structure which appears as though we have dug the foundation here. See, you can see this appears as though the foundation has been dug. And for a more clear picture, I will also apply a level of smoothness. Instead of 1, I will set an intensity of about 0.2. Okay, so, or even 0.1 is fine. So, a small amount of smoothness I am going to apply to this. So now you see the ground dug with actual foundation. So this is how the foundation will be dug. And now if you come into attribute and choose inspect, you can now see this has almost 14 lakhs triangles. So be very careful when you work with these kind of measures. Sometimes the machine may crash, and if you are working, if the machine crashes, then when you create the box, instead of using 100 subdivision, make the subdivision level less at about 20 or 30. Only if you have a very good machine, it can handle so much subdivision. I will press F2 and I will call this as SM underscore foundation. And if you come into the content drawer, in generated Satvik, you will have this foundation now available. I will also come here and I am going to rename this as SM underscore foundation. Now I will come to file and choose save all. I will move into my modeling underscore practice level. I will double click to open it, and this we had created in our previous session. I want to actually sculpt and deform a little of my chair. It is looking very boxy. I will come into my content drawer, select this chair, right click, and right now I am going to duplicate and make a copy of it. I will type SM underscore chair and sculpted, and now I am going to select this chair, drag it and put it into my scene. I will just drag it a little, and now to work only on the chair, now I will come here and I am going to right click on this, and you have visibility here. I will choose show only selected, but now the lighting is also gone. So I will come up and select this atmosphere folder and enable this. So now I have only this chair visible. So now let us apply some deformation to this chair and make it look more realistic. I will come here into modeling. I will come to this subdivision later on in the next session, but as of now I will come into model, and you have the future here subdivide. As of now, if you select the model, come into attribute, and if you inspect, I will click complete here. Now I will come into model subdivide, and now I will set a subdivision level of around 2, and you have different type of subdivision. One is bilinear and another is Catmull clock. This Catmull clock I am going to explain it later, but as of now we are going to use this Catmull clock smoothness. Then I am going to click accept. If I come into my deform, and now if I enable sculpting, now the surfaces are already smooth. Now I can just pull an edge here and slightly drag it up like this. I will right click, press A and come on the other side here and create similar kind of distortion here. I will slightly move it up like this. Then I am going to press Q, come down, and I will just move into my chair area here, and I am going to here come and choose smooth, and I am going to reduce my brush size by pressing open square bracket, and then I will just slightly smoothen it up these surfaces like this. So I will just smoothen up the surfaces, then I will press Q, come down, and actually I will also smoothen up these handles here a little. So see, it becomes a little thin now. So we making all these adjustments. Now I will click accept. I will come into offset, and I will slightly offset my chair. So when I offset it, you can now see my entire chair is getting converted into somewhat like a sofa. So I will offset it by a level of around 2. You have different options here, iterative and implicit. The other option you have here is implicit. So this implicit appears to be better. So you have two options here. Instead of iterative, I will come to implicit and I will set it to around 4 or even 6. See, now I have created the implicit kind of offset, and then I will click accept. And now our chair has entirely changed. I will come to file, choose save all, then I will right click, come to visibility and click on show all actors. Now my next mission is I want all the chairs present here. See, we had created this pattern in the last class, and here in this array all these chairs I want it to be replaced by this chair. So, for that I am going to select this entire chairs group here. I have to come into Xform and I have to click on harvest instances, and when I click on harvest instances, everything will be converted into separate instances and click accept. See, first I have to select the chair that I need to be transferred. Next I am going to click, the second selection will be my this chairs. So, this has to be transferred over here, and if I click on transfer and if I click accept, you can now see all the chairs here have been replaced with the new chair. See, even here you can see the chairs has been replaced. This is one feature which we had not discussed in our previous session. So, with this now I will come to file, choose save all. We are going to conclude this session on deform, and in our next session we are going to discuss about the components present in the model menu of our modeling module. So, let us meet in our next session. Thank you.